the really prominent socialists that you see on social media or YouTube or whatever that are all over the algorithm and get all kinds of like massive amounts of views, like it's not necessarily that much of a mistake, right? Like there's a reason why people like Chairman Africa find no distribution and find no reach on algorithms like that. And then there's a reason why democratic socialists do, right? And so the reason why I was showing you that is just to remind you that, like, just because you're not seeing it on stream, just because you're not seeing it on TV or whatever, don't let that make you think that those militant Marxists who understand conditions right now in the US and are actually recognizing what's wrong and how to fight against it, don't let that discourage you into thinking they're not out there. Right? The reason why I wanted to show you that clip is to show you they are out there. And that's just one example, right? Chairman Africa is just one of the like many out there. And so that's all, that's why I wanted to show you that. It's just like, just remember, for every big media like every big media streamer, political streamer, big political profile on Twitter who is saying the shittiest things about Marxism or making the most ridiculous claims about Deng Xiaoping being a capitalist, just remember that there's comrades out there who are actually on the ground, you know, studying and working against the actual conditions that exist as they are. And not just talking about like protesting until we change minds, but actually trying to come together, pool our resources together, and like uplift each other. You know, that's all. That's what I'll say is like, because that's what we ultimately want to do. We want, you know. I like that he talks about current politics because he knows how to talk about the American Democratic left, but that's not helpful for furthering socialism and communism. Like, why is he supporting people in our current political system? And this, I mean, this is at the end of the day, the critique that we have, right? Like, this is the difference that we have between the democratic socialist strategy. And this is why I do try and point out, like, I'm not actually trying to change any individual's position, especially anyone with a giant platform, right? But I do want comrades to recognize that because, okay, if Hassan is able to play the role of the pipeline that so many people want him to be, then we have to be able to be critical of what is wrong with the democratic socialist strategy. Otherwise, those who are becoming familiar with leftist politics through Hassan will never actually hear the critique of what Marxist-Leninists consider incorrect about the democratic socialist strategy. And then how will they ever know what the difference is between like democratic socialists and Marxist-Leninists? Right? And so that's the thing that I guess that's what I try and get across to people. It's not about like trying to move Hassan because like or whatever streamer. I'm just using that as an example, but like it's not about trying to move any particular social democrat or democratic socialist, right? Because we understand that people treat politics like religion in a sense. And they get very, very stuck in their politics. So instead, what we should always be doing is reaching out to the plethora of people that share those politics. And when we critique a Bernie Sanders, when we critique Zoran Mamdani, whatever it is, right? It's not a matter of like critiquing Zoran as an individual. What we're doing is critiquing democratic socialism, like. Right? And then all of those people that support Zoran Mamdani and then come to be disappointed by the limitations either of him trying to accomplish whatever very thing he might desire in his heart to accomplish, either the limitations of trying to get that done under capitalism or whatever other reasons that they can't be accomplished. When people are disenfranchised and dissatisfied with that, that's when they are looking for answers again. And that's why it's up to communist job to be there and to have like already our position out there. So that when people are looking for answers as to why social democracy can't fulfill these promises, Marxism Leninism is there to say like these, this is the strategy we have. This is the strategy we believe has been proven in practice, not just in one country, but in several countries. And yes, it can work here in our country too. But to do that, we have to pool our resources together and build our own institutions. Yeah, and this is why I support the way PSL engages in electoralism, and I don't support the way that DSA engages in electoralism, if this makes sense. Because with DSA, you end up like if you're fundraising for a DSA candidate, all that money is going into their campaign, purely, solely going into running their campaign and trying to win their Senate, trying to win the mayoral race or whatever it is. And that's what we have to understand. Whereas, because PSL understands that even if they were to win like whatever senator, whatever mayoral race they are able to win, that even in that instance that they won a seat like that, they would be very limited in what they were able to accomplish. Like me, right? Y'all would vote for me. If I ran for senator tomorrow, y'all would vote for me, but I wouldn't be able to actually get anything done because I would be trying to work within the fucking limitations of the existing bourgeois state. Right? And so my job would be, if I was elected to that position, would be to use the visibility of that position to grow the PSL as an independent organization. And that's the difference between what the PSL strategy of participating in elections is versus the DSA strategy. And that's why I say, like, when you're donating to a campaign of a PSL candidate, you're not just donating to money going into that campaign. You're donating to a larger organization that does stuff outside of that electoral campaign. So when you donate to like Claudia de la Cruz or whoever like is running in PSL, Gloria La Riva and Leonard Peltier ran previously. When you donate to those candidates, that money doesn't just go to trying to win this election campaign. It goes back into PSL, which is used for important things in the org and sustaining the organization in general. So that's why I am critical when I see my friends on the left running campaigns for a DSA candidate, and I'm supportive when PSL is running a campaign for an electoral candidate. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's the other thing too, like because Gray, they understand like they go to those protests understanding like being visible at them is how the masses can see what your platform is.
I ain't shook because motherfuckers try to take me out and stuff, but they can't, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yo, Mama M Media, thank you so much for the host. Welcome in. Thank you, Mama In on the green place.
You taking a gnome census? You counting my gnome saying?
Larry, the Western left has no idea what mutual aid is. No, absolutely not. Welcome in, Mama. Thank you so much for the host. We were just talking about the Western left right now. Yeah, and again, Joint Chief of Stash, like this is, I'm not really worried about like any individual or like analyze, like some people do, and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm not interested in like personal reasons why any individual streamer might be stuck in the position or stuck in the particular politics they are in. I'm just like, my thing is that I just speak to the people who are Democratic Socialist, and if that applies to a particular big streamer, then, well, it applies to them because they're a Democratic Socialist, not because they're Hassan. If that makes sense, right? Like, my critique of Zohran Mamdani applies to Zohran Mamdani, not because it's Zohran Mamdani, but because it's a Democratic Socialist. And I understand as a collective what democratic socialism means, because we don't want to fall into great man theory either, right? We understand like the reason why our leaders, the reason why like, again, Lenin and Stalin, etc., why we champion them the way that we do is because first they had a program that and a party and a movement that actually represented a will of like a mass amount of people, right? And actually understood the desire and demands of those masses, right? Those movements don't exist under capitalism, really. It's like, Simon, welcome in. Great to see you. It's like Zoran Mamdani, right? Like you could see the way that his campaign electrified some people, inspired some people. But now at the same time, think about how quickly that enthusiasm has died already. And you see it getting worse all the time, right? Because that's not a real populist movement. That's the illusion of a populist movement, in a sense. I was reading a letter from Clara Zetkin today about a conversation she had with Lenin, and she noted that he was maybe the first person to let her speak fully and completely before responding. Amazing. Actually, on what I'm saying here, I want to read you this quote, because I'm thinking of this Che Guevara quote, which, the end part of this quote, right here, I'm gonna read, I'll just read the whole thing, because like, again, when we're talking about separating what a leader, a socialist leader, a true socialist leader that really is just a representation of the masses' desire for independence, and individuals that exist under capitalism, I think this really explains it very well. And I want you to, when we get to the second paragraph of this quote, I want you to think about like the Zoran Mamdani, the AOC, and the Bernie Sanders and how this applies to this statement, okay? So here, in this, Fidel is the master. His own special way of fusing himself with the people can be appreciated only by seeing him in action. At the great public mass meetings, one can observe something like the dialogue of two tuning forks, whose vibrations interact, producing new sounds. Fidel and the mass begin to vibrate together in a dialogue of growing intensity until they reach the climax in an abrupt conclusion crowned by our cry of struggle and victory. The difficult thing to understand for someone not living through this experience of the revolution is this close dialectical unity between the individual and the mass, in which both are interrelated and at the same time in which the mass is an aggregate of individuals interacts with its leader. And that right there is why we reject the idea that like that leadership under Stalin or Lenin or Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-un has anything to do with a cult of personality. Instead, it's a cult of correct politics. Right? That's really what the people are aligned behind. Not some individual personality, but a correct political movement that represented not only the direction that they were moving in their struggle against capital and imperialism, but also their desire for a future where they can have their independence realized. And that's the fundamental difference. Now, this part here is when I want you to think about the Zorans and the Bernies. Because some phenomena of this kind can be seen under capitalism. When politicians, like Zoran, appear capable of mobilizing popular opinion. But when these are not genuine social movements, if they were, it would not be entirely correct to call them capitalists. They live only so long as the individual who inspires them, or until the harshness of capitalist society puts an end to the people's illusions. So think about that now with Mamdani. Again, you see through that, and Obama in a sense as well, Bernie too, right? Like the excitement for like the building up, and then as soon as they get to any kind of position we see the limitations of operating in the capitalist system because they are not a great man that can operate outside the system. They have to exist in the system. We don't need great man theory. We know that leaders emerge because they represent the subjective interest and the consciousness of a segment of the population. This applies to communist leaders as much as reformist ones. So by critiquing Zoroastrian, we're addressing the masses and their lack of class consciousness, not the individual reformist leader as such. Exactly. And I do think, Chimera, in my opinion, like, it is important to name the politicians, right? Like Lenin and Stalin did. Like, it's important to name the Zorans, the Bernie, the politicians that are putting forward these slogans and these strategies and these policies. Because people, there'll be a vast amount of people who, like, don't understand, like, the label necessarily, but they understand Zoran, right? And again, when you get into labels, you get into all kinds of, like, misdefinitions that people have and false definitions of labels that people have. Socialism? Are you talking about, the Nordic countries? Or are you know what I mean? So that's why it is very important that we are clear about, like, which politicians we're talking about.